Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be diving into a Minecraft mod guide and one of the best storage mods out there, Refined Storage. A mod by Roll. Yeah, sorry I butchered that. Anyways, today we're going to be looking at Refined Storage on an in-depth guide looking over each block and item that the mod provides. It includes how each block and item works, as well as how you're supposed to be using the system as a whole. Now, if you played a mod pack before, you very likely have seen Refined Storage, at least in the here's or there. Maybe you've never used it, maybe you've always been curious about it, but nonetheless, it acts as a sort of large computer storage system, is the best way that I can describe it. So you have your screen, your crafting grid, whatever you want to call it, the thing that you're monitoring, and then you have your disk drive, right? Sort of where you're storing all your information. In this case, we have a 64K storage disk, and for each K, for each tick there, it represents one item. So essentially, this grid can hold 64,000 items within inside this one disk here. Now we can also take this disk out, and you'll notice that the items are gone, and that's because they're all stored on this disk, much like a floppy disk or a flash drive, right? If you take it out of the computer, then the information is no longer available. So, to go over things on a quick aspect, we have our controller, which is essentially the battery of the computer, right? This is what you plug into the wall outlet to give everything life. Now, this will require some kind of power from another mod. Unfortunately, Refined Storage doesn't come with any power sources, so pick up another mod such as iron generators, thermal mechanisms. There's honestly a ton out there. You can have your pick, or the mod pack that you're playing probably already has some provided, if you're playing a mod pack, that is. You can also turn off this feature in the settings of Refined Storage if you absolutely just want there to be no power required for the controllers. Nonetheless, this is the basis of the system and how you'll see many people set theirs up, because you have the power powering each of the other blocks. Now, one thing to note about Refined Storage, as long as a block or cable is touching another block or cable, then it is considered as part of the system, and as long as that system has power, well, then all of the system has power. We'll get into this a bit here in a second. Now, you don't just have to use the disk drive, which is this block here, and the disk inside of it. You can also use physical blocks if that's what you prefer. So we also have these storage blocks. Same thing, this is a 64K storage block. You'll notice we have one chest inside there. If I was to break this storage block, that chest is now gone, and if we replace it, doesn't matter where we place it in the system, we now have access to it once more. The cables that I was talking about previously are these small little things here, and we'll get into the crafting recipes of all this stuff in just a minute here. But the important thing to note is that none of your system actually needs to be touching, except for by these cables. And you can do this wirelessly, but again, we'll get into that a bit later. So here we have our controller, which could be set up in a completely different room, and you just run cables there, hide the cables behind a wall, and well, you can have this in your main storage room and have these two things completely hidden. Likewise, you can have your disk drive in a whole separate room with all of your disks in it and all of your items stored in there if you just don't like the look of it. Similarly, storage blocks, store them as far away as you want. These cables can go on infinitely, however, the chunks must be loaded in order for them to actually send and receive data. Moving us right along here, we have the base majority of ingredients that you'll need for this mod pack. So, honestly, not a whole lot, and you can actually take out the controller and the chest. That was me just being a goof. But here we have silicone, which is a new item added from the mod. It's crafted very simply by putting nether quartz into a smelter of any kind, furnace, however you want to call it. And yeah, it gives you a one-to-one trade, a little bit of experience on it as well. And it's very cheap to get once you're in the mid to late game of Minecraft. Redstone dust, you will be needing this, and of course this is a vanilla ore block that you can find, so no big deal there. Quartz enriched iron, while it may sound scary, is actually very simple to make. 3 pieces of iron and a simple piece of nether quartz, and you're off to the races. Now we get on to our processors, which this is the part where most people tend to think that the mod gets overcomplicated, because you have to smelt the processor, but also first you have to make it. And a lot of mod packs will overcomplicate this process here to where it's not just in a crafting grid, so be sure you're checking out the details of each individual mod pack to make sure that, well, you're crafting it correctly. Nonetheless, for the processors, as you'll see here, this is a raw improved processor, but we'll just be calling it the golden one for right now because, well, it uses gold, silicone, which we already know, or silicon, it really depends on how you want to say it, and redstone dust. The fourth element, the processor binding, is also a new item added from the mod. If we take a quick look here though, it is also made very simply using 2 pieces of string and a slime ball. This will give you 8 processor bindings, in which case you can use this to create your processors. Moving us along, we have the raw basic processor, which is simply the iron version, right? Iron, silicone, redstone, and a binding. And then we have the diamond version. Again, diamond, silicone, redstone, processor, which is the majority of what you'll need for this mod. And if we do a quick search here on refined storage, so as we already know, what we need to get started with is a controller. If we take a quick look at the crafting recipe, it requires the quartz and rich iron, which we know how to make, silicone, advanced processor, and a machine casing. Machine casing is the only new thing here. This block is made by surrounding any stone variant in quartz and rich iron. Throw all these into a crafting recipe, and voila, we have ourselves a controller. And yes, for the large majority, refined storage does sync with JEI, so as long as you hit the plus button, it'll send it straight into the crafter. Not only that, with refined storage keeping up with how many items you actually have constantly, as long as you can make them, it'll continue to show it here. So I could continue to pull out more and more controllers. Equally so, I can always put items back in. Taking a look at all the blocks on an overview real quick, we see the controller, disk manipulator, which we'll be getting to in a minute, storage monitor, which most people don't use, but it can be kind of nice if you're playing slow and really enjoying your world. Crafting grid, which we already know what it does. Grid, which does everything the crafting grid does, except doesn't allow you to craft. Fluid grid, which allows you to see your fluids inside of the system because you can't actually see them in a crafting grid unless they're in bucket form. We'll get into that a bit more later. Over here to the side, we have our fluid storage blocks, which work much like the regular storage blocks, except, well, again, they hold fluids. Lava, water. If you have Tinkerer's Construct, that includes a whole lot of them. Then we have our interfaces, which we'll get into in just a minute here. Crafters and crafting related items. This is for auto crafting within your system, which again loses a lot of people, but we'll break it down to make things real simple. After that, we have a security manager and security card, which are simply used for online play. If you're not playing multiplayer, then these won't really affect you. Security card simply makes it to where people can only access certain elements of your system, like only being able to add items or only being able to craft, not being able to pull items out or put items in. So that's the long and the short of that. Moving on to the items that are provided and the cables and whatnot, we have basic cables, we have destructors, and somewhere we have constructors, right? So destructors, constructors. We'll be getting into the benefits of these two in just a bit. External storage, which can allow your system to basically read chests or any storage item basically, and connect it back to your home base. So you can use things like chests, yes, as temporary storage. Moving along, we have cover blocks, which simply allow you to cover up the cables as, well, the name would imply. Hollow covers allow you to pull the cable through these covers in case you need it to come out of a wall or floor or ceiling, whatever. Then we have our upgrades, which affect the cables. So let's say you have an exporter, or rather an importer, pulling items into the system, but it's going too slow, right? Let's say you have an iron farm and it's just dropping iron like crazy, 3,000 per hour or something. And your importer is only pulling in one item at a time. You can upgrade it with a stack upgrade, so it pulls in 64 at a time. You can also upgrade it with a speed upgrade, which I've lost somewhere, but it'll simply increase the processing speed of how many or how quickly it pulls. Crafting upgrades allow your importers and exporters to use auto craft features. Range upgrades will increase the range of your wireless transmitter and your wireless crafting grid, crafting monitor, and fluid grid. Then we have our wrench, which simply allows you to rotate blocks, connect them, all that good stuff, pop off the covers if that's what you need. Portable grid is kind of like a backpack system. Again, you don't see this used too often, but it really is handy dandy if you know how to use it properly. We have our network cards, which again go with our long range transmitters. All that out of the way, let's start looking at some of the uses and applications of this system. So we already have a fair use knowledge of our crafting grid and disk drive. In this disk drive, we also have a fluid storage disk, which can store, as we mentioned before, fluids. Taking a look at a fluid grid, you'll notice that the water is not in buckets, but rather just in raw water form. You can pull this out if you need it in tanks for other mods. And again, a lot of this is based on if you're playing a mod pack, look at what resources you have available. If not, be sure you're thinking about these aspects when you're including this mod if you have any interest in using them. A lot of people, again, never use a fluid grid because it's simply never needed. Next up, we have our storage monitor. I mentioned this earlier. A lot of people don't use it, but it simply outputs the item that you select. So right now it's not selected. And it'll tell you how many you have of that in your system. You shift and right click, and you can set the filter there. It'll give you a display number. If we add items in, it'll keep us updated. Again, not really needed because most people can open your crafting grid and see how many you have. But if you want a quick overview to make sure you're not running low or make sure that something's not overfilling your system, this could be a good way to do it. Next up, we have an interface, which is quite simply an importer and an exporter in one. So importers, as the name implies, import items into your system. For example, if we were to put a whole bunch of stone blocks in here, and we look at our number there, it's 57. Throw 64 in here. We'll see it slowly start to tick down. Again, this is where you can throw your speed and stack upgrades. If we want to show that off real quick. Take the stack. See it's going slowly one by one. Throw that in, and now they're all gone. And we can also see that the number inside of our storage system has increased to the total. So that's what importers do. If we were to break this, switch it out for an exporter, it does exactly what you think it would do in exports. Of course, you have to give it what item you want export. And voila, same thing. You can increase this with a stack upgrade if you so desire. And now as you see, this retains the item that we have, but it also reads that we have 0 in the system, and that's because, well, we just exported it all. All that out of the way, we can now dive into what an interface is, which is quite simply an importer and an exporter all in one. It's a block that also has its own internal storage, unlike the importer and exporter. Essentially, it's like the upgrade, but you don't always need it, and so a lot of people never use it. In all reality, it has a lot of useful functions, though, and that is it can both pull items in and push items out, much like any other storage device. So if we see here, we have a hopper leading down into a chest. We can always specify that, hey, we want this interface to export stone blocks, although we don't want it to be 64. So if we click on this, if you left click, you can set the number. So we just want it to be 1, and this will put it into the chest as long as we have cobblestone in our inventory. Likewise, let's say we have a whole lot of, I don't know, oak planks up top here. We'll keep 1 out for ourselves. Let's say we have a system that's importing them. Well, as you can see, this interface is already importing because it's being put in from a hopper, but let's say it was just being put in from another system that's not an auto import, because hoppers automatically import. Then you could come in here and select that you do want it to be importing oak wood. And of course, that would send it into your system. And la-di-da, you have one block that both imports and exports. Sorry, I did that backwards. That both exports and imports. For one of the more daunting things that people find with the pack, we have auto crafting. Now this looks a little bit extra because we've added some more elements to it. We have our crafting grid and describe. These two both very basic. Then we have our pattern grid, crafting manager, rather crafter manager. No crafting, just crafter. Crafting monitor, and the crafter itself. The pattern grid quite simply looks just exactly like your crafting grid. What this interface is used for is quite simply building your patterns. We'll get into what patterns are, but they're essentially a blueprint for what craft you want to make. This block sends the items needed for the crafting patterns to their given location. So right now, the crafter has a built-in crafting grid within itself, so it can do basic patterns such as chests, hoppers, crafting tables, all that good stuff, all on its own. However, crafters can also be sent into machine blocks or functional blocks such as furnaces. So if we take a look at this crafter, rather than saying crafter up top, it says furnace to let you know what it's pointing into. If we were to connect this up to the system here, we now have a way of auto crafting our raw iron there. Now we can also export wood into our furnace here, and this will essentially give us a fully automatic way of setting up iron. Now, not to overcomplicate things, I'd rather just show you the full process rather than telling you about it and then showing you the process. So now that you've seen how it's done, let's go in here and use the system real quick. So let's say we wanted a crafting table and we don't have any in the system. Simply click on one, set the amount that we want to make, and for whatever reason, we need 10 of them. We can hit select and start. Now you'll see that in order to create this, we're going to craft 10 crafting tables. In order to do this, we're going to need 40 wood, and they're all available. So we can start this. You can also hit cancel if you decide at the last minute, no, that's not what I need. Likewise, we can go to the chest, say we just want one, it'll take us 8 planks, and again, hit craft. As you've seen, the crafting tables are already done, and this is a very, very fast system. Now, as long as you have an item in the system, the craft little symbol down here won't pop up. Take the items out, once again, there you see, craft reappears. You can still craft items even if you have some in the system, simply by holding down the Control and Shift keys at the same time and left clicking. This will pull up the same crafting grid from before, and you can go on about your business. Now, let's say you want to craft something, such as a hopper, but this hopper actually needs something else. It needs a chest, and you also don't have any chests in the system. Well, luckily for us, we already have the chest pattern. And the system is smart enough to know, hey, if we need a hopper, we also need a chest. And we know how to make a chest. So it's going to craft a chest first, and then it'll be able to craft the hopper. So here we see, instead of it saying available, it's going to say to craft, meaning, well, it's going to craft this. Again, you see the other items needed and the end product here. So if we hit start, bam, already done. We're going to again take this out of the system and go on about our way, or come back later and say that we need more. But that's the long and the short of it. It's really not a complicated ordeal. Now, with the iron ingots, let's take all those out of the system. Again, you see that it's already set up here, iron ingots. We set to 1, hit start, and it sends it into the furnace. We're about to go through this whole process, just wanted to show you that it does work both ways, whether it's crafting in the crafter or in a whole different machine, such as a furnace. So in order to create these patterns, we'll go through one that we've already created, such as the crafting table. You can do this one of two ways. You can bring your blocks down and in, and make sure that you don't set them to be 64 on each. Otherwise, every time you go to craft it, it'll be crafting the full amount. Think of this like a genie in a bottle. Whatever you tell it, it'll be very specific. So then let's say we want to craft one crafting table from 4 oak planks. As you saw, that was a bit tedious. So what is recommended is that you get a mod such as REI or JEI, which allows you to pull up this little auto move item button. Simply click on that and, well, the crafting knows what you mean. This also works for things such as iron ingots. So if we right click on this, make sure you're on the correct tab, so smelting tab, and then we see that raw iron can go in and create iron ingots. If we select to move this, it says processing because it knows that this is going to be sent to a machine. It's not simply going to be done in a crafter. And so it has to find that machine, in which case we will define it. So let's go ahead and create ourselves this crafting table pattern once more. We have it all lined up. We have our patterns in the grid. Click the down arrow and voila, we have one crafting table. Crafting patterns are simply made with quartz enriched iron, redstone dust, and glass, which is why I've been kind of glossing over them because they're really not that difficult to create. If you're ever in your inventory and you just need to see like, hey, this is a pattern and that's a pattern, but I can't tell which is what, you can also hold down Shift key and it'll actually form the items that it crafts. So here you can see we have the iron and here we have the crafting table. After that point, you'll want to take your blueprints and put them into your crafter. Crafter is what actually holds, well, your patterns, right? It's what tells your system this is allowed to be auto-crafted. Now, if you're sending it into another machine, processing block, you'll need to make sure that the front face of the crafter is going into that block. So here you see we have the little grid. Here you have no grid, but that's because it's facing down into the furnace. You'll also need to make sure that the crafter is adhering to whatever properties of the block that it's inserting into. So for instance, we all know that furnaces can only take the top slot item, the item that's going to be smelted, from the top. If we were to say put this crafter on the back of the furnace, it'll only ever be inserting into the fuel spot, right? And that's not what we want because we want to craft with this. We want to be able to create whatever's in the top slot of the furnace here. We don't care about the fuel source. So, powering the furnace comes separate from the autocraft. The autocraft has nothing to do with the actual fuel within inside the furnace. If you'll see here, it just says it needs fuel. It needs fuel of any kind. As long as the furnace is going, then this iron can be created into an iron ingot. So the fuel is all on your own to do, as well as extracting from the furnace. Crafters won't extract back into the system unless they're simply connected up like so, and they're crafting basic recipes using basic crafting table. But anytime you're using a machine, you're going to need to export, or rather import, into the system whatever the product that you're creating is. So for instance here, it would be iron. As soon as the iron gets into the output slot, we all know again, furnaces output from the bottom. So we have an importer here, pulling items into the system. On the back of the furnace, we have an exporter, pulling items out of the system. And this item has been specified here, it is an oak plank. This will put it directly into the fuel slot, and then we can continue on with our auto crafting recipes. So again, you can come back over here, take your iron out, and we'll see here we have 62 raw iron right now. If we were to craft and send 20, it'll immediately take the 20 out. As we're using wood, this will continue to drain. So we have 119 now. If we just leave that for a second, you'll see that this is slowly filling up to 20. And again, you can increase your crafters with speed and stack upgrades if you want to, well, speed up the process. This is dumped all 20 in. It's smelting through. As soon as they come out, they are being pulled by the importer back into the system. Now, we don't have a filter on the importer. That's because we're not importing this into a big chest. Let's say this hopper, or let's say this furnace was going down into a hopper that was going into a chest, and we didn't want to take everything out of the chest. We just wanted to take iron. Well, then that's when you would come into the importer and specifically set a target, right? Such as ironing it. So that's the basics of auto crafting. It's really not that difficult. As you saw there, it's just a crafter and a pattern grid. Just these two blocks and knowing what you're crafting, basically. Very simple, very straightforward, no need to overcomplicate it. So the crafter manager simply allows you to manage your crafters. Don't overcomplicate it, don't overthink it. It manages your crafters. So it'll find all the crafters that are within your system. Right now we have a furnace and we have a crafter, and it will read the names of the machines. And it simply allows you to see what's in there, or you can also put them in there. So as you see here, we have raw iron outputs to an iron ingot, and here we have the same, literally the same thing, except obviously this says iron ore goes to a raw iron. So obviously this pattern's messed up, and we would not want to use this in our furnace, but you can see that we can auto put it in there. We'll put it over here, and it still manages. Taking a look at the crafting monitor, this simply tells you what's going on. So right now it's processing 6 iron ingots. These are scheduled. Now it just went through 1, now it has 5 to go. If we were to set up raw gold, same way, right? Say we wanted to see what this was used in. It's in smelting. Get our pattern there. We can throw all the gold back in the system. We go put this over here. Now we can see that we can craft gold, and it's really that simple. We already made the pattern. We'll send it in. And once the iron gets done, we can see on our crafting monitor, after that we have gold. But yeah, you can see up here you have your request, and this is essentially how long it's taken to complete that request. Once it's done, now we're processing the gold. It goes straight into the furnace. Iron is all done. Now I cleared the importer. As long as you don't have any blocks in here, then it won't be whitelisted or blacklisted. And you can always come over here to change the mode from whitelist to blacklist. You can also change it from items to fluids, but obviously we're not working with that right now. An exact mode would be, let's say you have something like slime in your world, and then you also have pink slime. So exact mode is simply going to say, does it matter if it's green slime or pink slime? If it doesn't matter, turn it off. If it does matter, turn it on. So that's as simple as I can make that all there. And again, you see the gold is going through. We had 119 oak. Oak has gone down. It's gone into the furnace and fueled the system. Now let's move on over to some applications to this. Here we have an exporter with a crafting upgrade inside of it. Earlier we mentioned that if you have a crafting upgrade inside of something, you can simply allow that exporter or importer or whatever machine you're using it in to, well, craft. So as you can see, it's starting to build up. And again, you just have to put the pattern in here. I think the first time through I put the pattern that was another pattern. But anyways, and this will keep your pattern chest as filled up as what it well possibly can, right? Anyways, moving on from the pattern, we have our crafting manager and crafting monitor again over here. Then we have a wireless transmitter. This is what we're actually going to be using if we want to, let's say, walk away with our crafting grid. Wireless crafting is very, very big with refined storage because, well, it means that I can be all the way over here fiddling with a machine or slaying some monsters and then decide, oh, you know what? I need to throw all these patterns in my system because it's just what needs to happen. And now it's exporting them because we have that set up, right? But yeah, I don't need this cable anymore, which is why a lot of people don't end up using that that probe system, whatever it's called, the portable grid, because once you get a portable crafting grid, you don't really need that. Now, I will say this is actually an add-on mod, so the portable crafting grid doesn't come with the base one. And you can see now we're out of crafting, well, now we're back in range. Now we're out of range. So this does have sort of limits to it, and that's where we'll get into a bit of the other mods. It also has range upgrades on it, so at its base, this can only go 16 blocks, which isn't very helpful, but again, if you're just walking around your base, you can use this wireless crafting grid to do whatever you need. Now, I am using the creative one because the regular one needs to be charged, and again, we don't really have chargers in this mod pack because this is just meant to showcase. Now, we do have things called relays, which simply allow you to extend the range at which your system is being picked up, right? So if we power this with cable, say we ran cable all the way over here, then we stuck another wireless transmitter on top, threw a whole lot of range upgrades in there, then you'll see that we can go even further away and continue to use our crafting grid. And this can be really useful, again, if you just need to be further away from your base, or maybe your base is just massive, and you want to be able to auto-craft or craft in general all around it. Now, you'll notice that we have this set up here, and we don't have any crafting grids or creative controllers on it, and yet it's all still powered and looks like it's still functional. The next thing that I want to talk about are the actual network transmitters and network receivers. These two blocks are very useful, and again, hardly ever used, but what they can do is transmit things wirelessly, so you don't need to add all the cables and all that junk. It's quite simple. You take a network card, put your network transmitter into the system where you're going to be doing your crafting, wherever your creative controller, you know, the main hub. Have your network receiver with all the rest of the stuff you want to do. You know, maybe set off in an auto crafting system, or maybe set off in your storage system. It doesn't matter. You're going to want to right click the network receiver, or maybe a shift right click. Not sure, but it doesn't have an interface, so just make sure you get it selected. You know, pull this back, throw the network card into the network transmitter, and it will it'll pick it up. Now, from this network receiver, basically just treat it as any other piece of your system. You can run cables off of it into crafters, into storage blocks, into relays. It can be used just to keep the system going. Obviously, relays allow you to continue transmitting further and further distances, so, you know, you can essentially have the system set up throughout the entire course of your world as long as you have the right components already in place. Now, moving us along to a lot of elements that aren't used for, well, various reasons. We have the security manager and the disk manipulator. So let's go ahead and take out everything I have here, and we'll take a look at these things. So security cards are very simple. You can configure them per player or in general. As long as there's nothing in the security manager, then every player that's on the server has access to everything in the system and can do everything that the system offers. If you want to set a card for everybody, right, and say that nobody can do anything except for look at it, you can set this to modify and click it in there. And now people can only modify it. I'm trying to click, as you can maybe hear with my mouse, and it won't let me insert. Say you only wanted people to insert, but not exert. Same thing. Put it on there. I can put it into the system. I cannot pull it out of the system. Likewise, you can also set these per player. So let's say you wanted new players to automatically get sent or set with a security card of, you know, being able to insert and extract, but not being able to build. That's basically all the security manager does. And yeah, it's only good for online. But if you are online, it can be very, very useful for setting up a town system or a bank system, something like that. Next up, we have the disk manipulator, which I think is best explained in conjunction with the portable grid. Portable grid simply allows you to carry a storage disk with you and to view it portably. So this is separate from the wireless crafting grid. The wireless crafting grid is pulling into this system here. The creative portable grid, or rather just the portable grid, obviously is the one that you'll be using, can go anywhere in your world, and as long as you have that disk, you can pull things out. Now, it doesn't have crafting in it, but you can always make a crafting table and put it in the grid, and then you're good to go. But this is like the world's largest backpack, right? I can hold 64,000 items in this portable grid. So you take, your beacons with you, your weapons with you, just some building blocks with you, you go caving and all that stuff, and you come back with a whole lot of cobblestone, and you're like, man, I really want all this cobblestone out of my backpack, right, out of my portable grid, but I want to leave all of the enchanted books, I want to leave all the swords, I want to leave all the beacons. That's where this disk manipulator comes into play. So this top bar here is sort of your whitelist or blacklist. Again, we'll set it to cobblestone because we just came back from a long trip. We did a whole lot of mining, and that's what we want dumped into the system. We'll put our network card in there, and it'll start exporting cobblestone into the system, or rather importing cobblestone into the system, however you want to view that, right? So that's pretty much it. That's all that does. That's all that the portable grid does. It's just a backpack system that allows you to pull and push items into, regardless of distance, as long as you have a storage grid, or a storage disk. And all that the security manager does is allow you to filter who can use what on a server. This manipulator simply pulls items from cards into your system. I think there's also a way you can export onto cards if that's what you want to do. Moving us on over, we now can take a look at the deconstructor and, well, as you can see here, constructor. Most people don't use these blocks for very simple reasons. There's typically machines from other mods that do this better. However, if again this is one of your mainline mods, this is all you're going to have. So we can take a look here at the destructor. It breaks blocks. What could we possibly have use for this? Well, quite simply, you don't want that filter. You put things in there like iron ore, gold ore, coal ore. You come back from your adventures, you offload it into the system, and it'll basically auto place it and break it. Sorry, I didn't mean to type in auto there. So yeah, let's just say we came back with a whole bunch of iron ore, right? I need to turn cheating back on. Because we went out with our Silk Touch pickaxe and we came back with a whole lot of iron ore. We'll be able to throw this into the system. The constructor is placing the iron ore, right? The deconstructor is breaking the iron ore. However, we also have a speed upgrade, so it's breaking it incredibly fast, and we also have a fortune upgrade. We can also add speed upgrades to the constructor and make this incredibly fast, like so. Where now you don't even hardly notice the blocks are going. They're still going through the system, still getting broke, and we're still getting fortune for it. So again, this is a good way if you're playing in a more vanilla type mod pack. Insert all of your rewards into a system and have it spit back out the rewards without you really having to do anything. It's just a nifty way of automating this or that or whatever you may have it, right? And you can do this on a tree farm or pumpkin farm maybe. So now it's all done, and we have 443 iron back into our system that we could then, send off to this one to use the furnace and the crafter to continue on. And ladies and gentlemen, as much as you may be in disbelief about it, that's actually all that there is to refine storage. We, of course, have our wrench, which we can use to rotate blocks, as I've mentioned. Very nifty. We have our covers, right, that we can use to cover blocks and cables to make it look like they're not really there. This is just part of our system, right? This is normal. That's not working for some reason. It's got a broken texture on the destructor one. That may be just something wrong with the mod, right? And sometimes that'll happen. Yeah, so it looks like it's something wrong with that. Is it for the constructor as well? Yeah. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for refined storage. Now, there are a lot of add-on mods that will increase the amount of storage you can make, like going up to 128k storage blocks or 256k storage blocks that just go, absolutely beyond the realm of reality. Heck, even our wireless crafting grid is actually a whole different mod. It doesn't come from the base refined storage, which is a little crazy to me, but, whatever. Make sure you're using all of this to the, best advantage that you possibly can. Just if you need an extra piece explained, go back, slow down the video, watch it back, ask in the comment section. I'm always here to try to help you understand mods a little bit better, because I myself have gone through the struggle of not knowing, what this or that does when this or that works. And so I'm just trying to make an updated, organized, standardized list of mod guides that can keep things fresh for anyone playing active mod packs out there. Let me know down in the comment section below if I happen to miss anything. Of course, as per the usual, I hope you all stay safe, stay awesome, stay crafting. And I'll see you in the next guide or in the next video if you're just, someone that likes the, or if you're, just somebody that likes the channel. Be sure you leave a like on the video if you did enjoy, subscribe if you want to see more awesome Minecraft mod guides from yours truly. And until next time, take it easy, stay crafty, stay safe, peace out.